What would you do if you saw a mother and child fighting to survive, in the worst way imaginable? Shaquille O'Neal, NBA legend, millionaire and global icon, was in Lagos closing a business deal. But no one knows one heartbreaking sight would change his trip, and two lives forever. The streets of Lagos pulsed with life, a chaotic symphony of honking okadas, shouting vendors, and blaring car horns. The air hung thick with diesel fumes, mixing with the scent of fried plantains from roadside stalls. Pedestrians wove through traffic fearlessly, their feet barely missing the speeding motorcycles that zipped past. Beneath the scorching 110-degree sun, the city refused to slow down. Shaquille O'Neal sat in the back of a sleek black SUV, tinted windows shielding him from the relentless sun. His broad shoulders barely fit in the seat, and his knees pressed against the front. Dressed in a crisp, custom-tailored navy blue suit, he looked every bit the businessman he had become after retiring from basketball. This wasn't his first time in Lagos. He had been here before for charity work, business deals, and even a few speaking engagements. But today was different. His visit was all about numbers, profits, investments, and contracts. A major Nigerian tech company wanted him as a brand ambassador, and he was here to close the deal. His assistant, a sharp-dressed Nigerian American named David Okoro, sat beside him, flipping through documents. "Shaq, after the meeting, we have dinner at the Sky Lounge. High-end place, Lagos' finest. You'll love it," David said, adjusting his tie. Shaq gave a half smile. He appreciated the hospitality, but something about this trip felt off. Maybe it was the exhaustion from constant travel, or maybe it was just the weight of being in a place where struggle and wealth clashed so visibly. As the SUV turned onto a crowded street, something outside the window made Shaq's smile vanish. At the edge of the road, near a pile of trash bags and discarded fruit peels, a woman knelt on the ground. Her dress, once a bright yellow, was now torn and covered in dirt. She was heavily pregnant, at least 8 months along. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she adjusted the small child strapped to her back. The boy, no older than 2, was fast asleep, his tiny ribs visible through a faded, sweat-soaked t-shirt. His arms dangled lifelessly, too weak to hold on. Shaq felt his stomach tighten. The city noise blurred as he focused on the heartbreaking scene. A pregnant mother, exhausted and starving. A child barely clinging to life. He had seen poverty before. He had grown up with struggle. But this was different. "Stop the car," Shaq said suddenly, his deep voice cutting through the air. David looked up, confused. "What?" "Stop. The car," Shaq repeated, his tone firm. The driver hesitated but obeyed. The SUV rolled to a stop at the curb, causing frustrated drivers behind them to honk loudly. Shaq didn't care. Without waiting, he pushed open the door and stepped out, his massive frame casting a shadow over the scene. The woman tensed, clutching her child protectively. Her wide, frightened eyes darted to the towering man standing before her. She had likely never seen someone this large in real life, let alone someone dressed in a suit worth more than most people in the neighborhood made in a year. Shaq crouched down slowly, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The woman hesitated. Her lips trembled, as if speaking took more strength than she had left. "Neka," she whispered finally. Shaq glanced at the boy, then back at her. "And him," she swallowed hard, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "Obinna," she said, her voice barely above a breath. Shaq could see the pain behind her eyes. She wasn't just tired. She was on the edge of breaking. David had stepped out of the SUV by now, watching the scene unfold with quiet curiosity. A few bystanders had also noticed, slowing their steps, whispering among themselves. "Are you hungry?" Shaq asked, his voice softer now. Neka nodded hesitantly, but hunger wasn't even the biggest problem. She bit her lip before speaking again. I don't know where to go. Shaq furrowed his brow. What do you mean? Nneka lowered her gaze. My husband. He was a fisherman. He drowned in a storm months ago. No family, no home. Her voice cracked. Just me and Obinna. Shaq exhaled slowly, his heart tightening in his chest. He had come to Lagos for business, but at this moment, none of that mattered. This wasn't just a mother in need. This was a test, and he already knew what he had to do. Lagos was a city of movement, of people always rushing, always pushing forward. But now, for a brief moment, the street had paused. Vendors stopped calling out their prices. Passers-by slowed their steps. The air buzzed with curiosity. Why had a giant of a man stepped out of a luxury SUV to kneel before a woman in rags? Some whispered, recognizing Shaquille O'Neal. Others simply stared, their eyes darting between the towering celebrity and the fragile mother clutching her child. Shaq barely noticed them. His focus remained on Nneka and Obinna. David, still standing by the car, cleared his throat. Shaq, we need to get going. The meeting. Shaq raised a hand, silencing him. This is more important. David sighed but knew better than to argue. Shaq turned back to Nneka. When did you last eat? Nneka hesitated, shame creeping into her expression. She stole a glance at Obinna, still asleep on her back. Yesterday. A little rice. Shaq's jaw tightened. And him? Nneka swallowed hard. Same. Shaq exhaled slowly. He had been hungry before, back when his mother struggled to put food on the table. But he had never been this hungry. He had never been forced to go days without knowing where the next meal would come from. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick stack of crisp $100 bills. Without counting, he pressed it into Nneka's trembling hands. Take this, he said. Get food, get water, get whatever you need. Nneka stared at the money, her fingers tightening around it like it might disappear. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. This is too much. Shaq shook his head. It's not enough, but it's a start. Tears welled in her eyes. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. The bystanders murmured louder now. Some watched in awe, while others scoffed. A middle-aged man in a faded green polo shirt shook his head. Throwing money won't fix her life, he muttered. A woman in a bright orange headscarf nodded in agreement. She needs more than cash. What happens when it runs out? Shaq heard them, and deep down, he knew they were right. He wasn't here to drop a few bills and walk away. If he was going to help, he was going to really help. He turned to David. Find a hotel, the best one nearby. Get her and the kid a room. David blinked. Shaq, you're serious about this? Shaq gave him a look. David sighed. Okay, I'll handle it. As David stepped aside to make the call, Shaq turned back to Nneka. Come with me. She hesitated. Where? To eat, to rest, to figure out the next step. Nneka clutched Obinna tighter. She had spent months struggling, relying on no one. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But then she looked into Shaq's eyes. There was no pity, no judgment, just kindness. Slowly, she nodded. 15 minutes later, they were seated in a small, family-run restaurant tucked between two busy streets. The walls were faded, the ceiling fan spun lazily, but the smell of sizzling meat and fresh bread filled the air. Nneka sat stiffly, unsure how to behave in a restaurant she had never dreamed of entering. Shaq, despite his massive size, seemed at ease. A waitress approached, eyes widening when she recognized him. You're... Shaq smiled. Yeah, but right now I'm just a guy ordering food for my friend. The waitress nodded quickly, still flustered. What would you like? Shaq turned to Nneka. Anything you want. She hesitated, glancing at the menu like it was written in a foreign language. Shaq chuckled. Okay, we'll make it easy. Jollof rice, Suya, plantains, and water. Lots of water. The waitress hurried off. Nika shifted in her seat. I don't know how to thank you. Shaq waved a hand. Don't. Just eat. When the food arrived, Nika hesitated again. It had been so long since she had eaten a full meal. The sight of steaming rice and tender spiced beef made her stomach twist painfully. Then, Obina stirred. The little boy blinked, eyes groggy, and then he smelled the food. Shaq watched as Nika scooped up a spoonful of rice, gently pressing it to her son's lips. Obina opened his mouth, took a bite, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, he smiled. A small, weak smile. But a smile nonetheless. Shaq felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't just hunger. This was survival. And he wasn't done yet. For the first time in months, Nika ate without counting bites, without worrying if she should save some for later. Obina, now awake and sitting on her lap, chewed slowly, his tiny hands gripping a piece of fried plantain like it was treasure. His stomach was still small, still weak from hunger, but every bite brought color back to his face. Shaq watched them, leaning back in his chair. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations, the clatter of plates, and the occasional sizzle from the kitchen. But in front of him, time felt slower. "This is good," Nika whispered. Shaq smiled. "Told you." She looked up at him. "You didn't have to do this," Shaq shrugged. "Yeah, I did." Nika studied him. "Why?" Shaq exhaled, running a hand over his shaved head. "Because I've seen struggle. I've been around it my whole life. And because I can help." Her eyes softened. "Most people just walk past." Shaq's jaw clenched. He thought of the people on the street, the ones who had ignored her, the ones who had looked at her like she was invisible. He leaned forward, resting his massive hands on the table. "Not me," Nika swallowed hard. She didn't cry. Not here, not now. But her fingers tightened around Obina's small frame, as if grounding herself. Shaq cleared his throat. "So, tell me about you, before all this." Nika hesitated. No one had asked in a long time. She looked down at her son, running a gentle hand over his short curls. "I grew up in a small village. Not rich, not poor. Just simple. My father was a school teacher. My mother sold fabrics in the market." Shaq nodded, listening. "I met my husband when I was 22. Chikwudi. He was a fisherman, strong and kind. We married, moved to Lagos, started a life." She paused, her lips pressing together. Then, the storm came. Shaq stayed quiet, letting her speak at her own pace. "He went out one night. Said he'd be back before morning. But the sea," she exhaled shakily. "The sea took him." Shaq's chest tightened. "I had nothing," Nika continued. "No savings, no land, no family here. I found small jobs washing clothes, selling food on the roadside. Then I got pregnant again." She touched her belly, her hand resting protectively. "But Lagos is cruel when you're alone. Landlords don't care if you can't pay. Employers don't wait when you're sick. One day I was working and I fainted from hunger. They fired me. After that I couldn't afford rent. The streets became my home." Silence settled between them. Shaq exhaled. "Damn." Nika laughed softly, a hollow sound. "Yeah, damn." Obina, finished with his food, yawned, his tiny fingers gripping the front of Nika's dress. She kissed his forehead gently. Shaq drummed his fingers on the table. He had heard enough. "I'm getting you off the street," he said firmly. Nika blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Her lips parted, as if she wanted to argue. But something in Shaq's tone, steady, certain, made her pause. David, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, cleared his throat. Shaq, we need a plan." Shaq nodded. "I'm working on it." "First things first," Shaq said. "You're not sleeping outside anymore." David, still scrolling on his phone, glanced up. I found a hotel. Clean, safe, not far from here. Shaq nodded. Book it. A month in advance. David raised an eyebrow. A month? Shaq gave him a look. David sighed. Fine, I'll handle it. Neka's hands trembled slightly. A whole month? Shaq smirked. You think I'm dropping you off and disappearing? Neka opened her mouth, then shut it. Obina snuggled against her chest, already half asleep. She swallowed. Shaq, I don't know how to repay you. Shaq leaned back, crossing his arms. You will, just not with money. Neka frowned. Then how? Shaq grinned. By getting back on your feet. By making something of this chance. Neka exhaled, overwhelmed. For the first time in a long time. She had hope. And Shaq? He wasn't done yet. The hotel was simple but clean. White walls, a sturdy bed, air conditioning humming softly in the corner. For Neka, it felt like a palace. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers pressing into the mattress as if testing if it was real. Obina lay curled up beside her, already asleep, his tiny body rising and falling with steady breaths. Shaq stood by the doorway, watching. You good? He asked. Neka nodded slowly. Yes, She looked around the room, her voice thick. I don't remember the last time I had a door to lock. Shaq's chest tightened. He had grown up rough, but he had never known this kind of struggle. David set a small bag down on the table. Some clothes, toiletries, food for Obina. Enough for now. Neka turned to Shaq. You already did so much, you don't have to. Shaq raised a hand. I'm not doing this for praise. I'm doing this because it's right. Neka swallowed hard. She wasn't used to kindness without a catch. Shaq sat down in the armchair across from her. All right, here's what's next. Neka straightened, listening. Tomorrow morning you're seeing a doctor, he said. Full checkup. You and Obina. Neka opened her mouth to protest. Medical care was expensive, but Shaq waved her off. Already covered, her throat tightened. Shaq continued. After that, we get you some real food, more clothes, whatever you need. And then, he leaned forward. We figure out what's next. Neka's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Shaq rubbed his chin. I don't want you just surviving, Neka. I want you living, thriving. Her hands rested on her belly. I used to have a small food stall, she admitted. I sold rice, beans, fried fish. Nothing big, but it was mine. Shaq's eyes lit up. You want to do that again? Neka hesitated. I don't know. It takes money, a good location, a license. Shaq grinned. Sounds like my kind of problem. She frowned. What? I'm gonna set you up, he said simply. Not just with food, with a real business, a store, a place people come to, not just some roadside hustle. Neka's breath caught. A store? Her? She shook her head. Shaq, that's too much. I can't. Yes, you can, he interrupted. I believe in you. Neka's eyes shimmered with emotion. No one had ever said that to her before. Shaq leaned back, stretching his massive arms. But first, you sleep. No worries tonight. Tomorrow, we get to work. Neka exhaled, nodding. Okay. For the first time in a long time, she believed tomorrow might actually be better. And for the first time in his life, Shaq felt like he was making a real difference. But he wasn't done yet. The next morning, Neka woke up to the soft hum of the air conditioning. For a moment, she forgot where she was. No loud horns, no people stepping over her. Just peace. Obina stirred beside her, his small fingers gripping the blanket. He was still too thin, but he had slept through the night, something he rarely did on the streets. A gentle knock on the door made her sit up. It's time, David called from outside. She took a deep breath. Today, she wasn't just surviving. She was moving forward. Shaq had arranged for them to visit a private hospital in Victoria Island, one of the wealthier parts of Lagos. The lobby smelled like antiseptic, and the floors gleamed under bright white lights. Everything felt foreign. A nurse greeted them, her smile warm but professional. "You must be Neka." Neka nodded hesitantly. "We'll start with a full checkup for both you and your son," the nurse continued. "Dr. Olumide is expecting you." Shaq patted Neka's shoulder. "You got this." She gave him a nervous glance before following the nurse down the hall. Dr. Olumide was a tall man in his 50s, with graying hair and a calm demeanor. He examined Obinna first, his face serious as he listened to the boy's heartbeat, checked his reflexes, and gently pressed on his tiny stomach. Then he turned to Neka. "How long have you been on the streets?" She hesitated. "Over a year," Dr. Olumide sighed. "You're severely malnourished, but that we can fix. The bigger concern is your pregnancy." Neka's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" The doctor folded his hands. "You're 8 months along, but your baby is underweight. Your body isn't getting enough nutrients to support a healthy delivery. If we don't intervene, you could have complications." Neka felt dizzy. Complications? Her first child had been difficult enough. Now she was weaker. She had spent months without proper food, sleeping in the dirt. She swallowed hard. What do I need to do?" Dr. Olumide glanced at Shaq. "She needs to be admitted. Proper nutrition, monitoring. Possibly an early delivery if the baby doesn't grow." Shaq didn't hesitate. "Book the room." Neka's eyes widened. "Shaq, I can't let you—" He crossed his arms. "We're not arguing about this." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Shaq crouched down, looking her in the eye. "Because you deserve better. Your kids deserve better. And because I can." Neka blinked rapidly, fighting tears. She had never met a man like him before. As the nurses prepared her for admission, Shaq stepped outside to take a call. David followed. "This is gonna take a while," Shaq muttered, rubbing his bald head. "But we're doing the right thing." David hesitated. "There's something else, boss." Shaq raised an eyebrow. "What?" David exhaled. "I ran a background check on Neka." Shaq frowned. "Why?" "Just being careful," David said. "Turns out her husband's death might not have been an accident." Shaq stiffened. "What do you mean?" David handed him his phone. A news article from 2 years ago popped up. The headline sent a chill down Shaq's spine. "Local fisherman drowns in suspicious circumstances. Wife claims foul play." Shaq's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a story about poverty. This was bigger. And now, he was right in the middle of it. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor beside Neka's bed. The bright white walls, the clean sheets, and the scent of antiseptic were a world away from where she had been just hours ago. She lay there, exhausted, her body weak but her mind racing. Beside her, her son was curled up on a small cot, his tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't shivering. Shaq sat in the chair beside her, his large hands folded in front of him. He had insisted on staying until she woke up. When her eyes fluttered open, he leaned forward. "How are you feeling?" His voice was low, gentle. Neka swallowed, her throat dry. "Like I'm in a dream." He gave her a small smile. "It's real." Her fingers trembled as she touched the soft blanket covering her. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said. "Just get better." She turned her head, looking at her son. His tiny fingers clutched a corner of the blanket. Her eyes welled with tears. "He hasn't slept like this in months." Shaq followed her gaze. "What's his name?" "Obinna," she whispered. "It means father's heart." A lump formed in Shaq's throat. He had seen a lot in his life. Poverty, struggle, pain, but nothing compared to this. A mother, 8 months pregnant, left to survive on the streets with her child. He cleared his throat. I want to help you, Neka. Not just today, long term. Her eyes widened. Why? Because I can. He leaned back in his chair. I was raised by a strong mother. She taught me that when you see someone struggling, you help. No questions. Neka wiped a tear from her cheek. No one has ever helped me before. Well, that changes today. He glanced at his watch. You're safe here. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about what's next. As he stood to leave, Neka's voice stopped him. Shaq? He turned. She swallowed hard. Thank you, he nodded. You don't have to thank me. Then, with a small smile, he added, just promise me one thing. What? When you're strong again. When you have more than enough, help someone else. She nodded, gripping the blanket tightly. For the first time in a long time, she had hope, and it was because a stranger had stopped and cared. The sun had just begun to rise over Lagos, casting a golden glow over the city. From the window of her hospital room, Neka could see the world waking up. Vendors setting up their stalls, children in school uniforms walking hurriedly, and motorcycles weaving through early morning traffic. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was waking up to another day of suffering. Shaq arrived just after breakfast, carrying a bag of fresh fruit. He set it on the table beside her bed. How's the little man? He asked, glancing at Obinna, who was sitting up now, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Neka smiled, touching her son's cheek. Better. Stronger. Shaq pulled up a chair. That's what I like to hear. He took a deep breath. Neka, I don't want you to just survive. I want you to live. Really live. She frowned slightly. I don't know what that means anymore. It means you won't have to beg or wonder where your next meal is coming from. It means security, a home, a future for you and your children. Her breath hitched. That's not possible for someone like me. Shaq shook his head. Don't say that. It is possible. And I'm going to prove it to you. She searched his face, trying to understand why this man, this stranger, cared so much. Why are you doing this? He leaned forward. Because I believe in second chances. Neka's lips trembled. What? What do you have in mind? Shaq sat back and stretched his legs. First, we get you a home, a real one. Not just a shelter, but a place where you and Obinna will be safe. Her eyes widened. Second, I want to make sure you and the baby get the best medical care. He tapped his chest. I got connections. You're going to have the best doctors in Lagos taking care of you. Neka covered her mouth with her hands, overwhelmed. But that's not all, Shaq continued. I want you to have a way to take care of yourself. A business. Something steady so you never have to worry about money again. Tears slid down her cheeks. A business? He nodded. Yeah, something you're good at. Something you love. She laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. I used to sell fresh vegetables before my husband died. I had a small stall in the market. Shaq grinned. Then, we'll start there. A grocery store. Bigger than a stall. A real shop. Neka's hands trembled as she gripped the bedsheet. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Shaq said simply. Say you're ready to take your life back. She exhaled shakily, then nodded. Yes, Shaq smiled. Good. Now let's get started. For the first time in a long time, Neka felt something unfamiliar, but beautiful. Hope. Neka stood in front of the apartment building, staring up at it in disbelief. It was nothing extravagant, just a modest but well-maintained complex in a quiet neighborhood. But to her, it looked like a palace. Shaq had handled everything. The rent was paid for 2 years up front, the paperwork was sorted, and even the electricity and water bills were covered for the first 6 months. Come on, Shaq said, nudging her gently. Let's go inside. With Obina clinging to her hand, Neka took slow, hesitant steps toward the door. Her heart pounded as she turned the key in the lock and pushed it open. Inside, the apartment was fully furnished. A cozy living room with a soft couch. A kitchen with a fridge stocked with food. A bedroom with a proper bed, clean sheets, fluffy pillows. Neka covered her mouth with both hands. Tears welled in her eyes. Shaq watched her reaction, then said, "It's not just a place to stay. It's your home now." She turned to him, shaking her head in disbelief. "I've never had a home like this." "You do now," he said simply. Obina let go of Neka's hand and ran to the couch, bouncing on it with excitement. He giggled, and for the first time in a long time, his laughter wasn't tired or weak. It was full of life. Neka turned back to Shaq. "I don't know how to thank you," Shaq shrugged. "You don't have to." She wiped her eyes and exhaled deeply. This feels like a dream," Shaq grinned. "Then let's make sure you never wake up from it." Over the next few weeks, Neka's life transformed. Shaq kept his word. He introduced her to doctors at one of the best hospitals in Lagos, where she received full prenatal care. For the first time in months, she didn't worry about her health or her babies. Obina also got medical attention. The doctors treated his malnutrition, and within days, his energy returned. His cheeks, once sunken, began to fill out. His eyes sparkled again. The biggest change, though, was the business. Shaq arranged for a small grocery store to be set up in Neka's name, Neka's Fresh Market. Located in a busy part of town, it was stocked with fresh fruits, vegetables, rice, spices, and baby supplies. On the morning of the grand opening, Neka stood in front of the store, wearing a crisp new dress, her hands trembling as she held the key. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors, customers, curious passers-by. Shaq stood beside her, towering over everyone. "Go on," he said, nodding toward the door. With a deep breath, Neka unlocked the store and pushed the door open. The small crowd erupted in cheers. She stepped inside and ran her fingers over the shelves. No longer searching through trash. No longer begging. This was hers. Tears filled her eyes as she turned back to Shaq. "You've given me my life back," he smiled. "Nah, Neka. You just needed someone to believe in you." She exhaled and looked around at her new world. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. News of Shaq's kindness spread like wildfire. By the next morning, videos of Neka opening her store flooded social media. One clip showed her unlocking the door, stepping inside with wide, teary eyes. Another captured Obina laughing, holding Shaq's massive hand in his tiny fingers. The internet couldn't get enough. A Twitter user posted, "Shaquille O'Neal didn't just throw money at the problem. He changed this woman's entire life. Respect." On TikTok, a video of Neka stocking shelves had over 1 million views. The caption read, "She was homeless last week. Now she owns a business. Faith in humanity restored." Instagram flooded with comments. "Shaq is a real-life angel." This is what true wealth looks like. We need more people like him in this world. Within hours, local news stations picked up the story. Reporters rushed to Neka's store, hoping for an interview. A journalist approached Neka, microphone in hand. "Tell us, how do you feel?" Neka, still overwhelmed, placed a hand over her chest. "I feel blessed. I never imagined someone like Shaq would notice me, let alone change my life." The journalist turned to Shaq. "Why did you do this?" Shaq folded his arms, his deep voice calm. "My mama always told me, see a need, fill a need." "That's all this is," the journalist smiled. "Do you think this will inspire others?" Shaq nodded. "I hope so. Kindness doesn't have to be big. You don't need millions. You just need a heart." Around the city, people talked about the story everywhere. At markets, in taxis, at schools. A young woman watching the news turned to her husband. If Shaq can change one life like this, maybe we can do something too. A shop owner in the neighborhood decided to donate extra food to struggling families. A group of teachers started collecting supplies for underprivileged students. Shaq's act of kindness didn't just help NECA. It started a ripple effect. The first few days at NECA's Fresh Market felt like a dream. Customers trickled in, curious about the store owned by Shaq's woman. NECA, now dressed in clean clothes, stood behind the counter with a newfound confidence. Obina sat in a small play area Shaq had arranged, playing with a toy car. His laughter filled the store, a sound NECA hadn't heard in months. But reality soon hit. One evening, as NECA balanced the cash register, she noticed something worrying. The store wasn't making as much money as she thought. She frowned at the numbers. How could this be? Her assistant, Amaka, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, sighed. Auntie NECA, people are coming, but they're not buying much. Why? NECA asked, her stomach tightening. Amaka hesitated. The prices? NECA had stocked the best quality fruits, rice, and baby products, things she wished she'd had when she was struggling. But the prices were a little higher than the nearby markets. She looked out at the customers browsing, but leaving empty-handed. A mother picked up a can of baby formula, checked the price, and slowly put it back. NECA's heart sank. That night, she lay on her mattress in her new apartment staring at the ceiling. Shaq had given her everything to start fresh, but now it was her responsibility to keep it going. She sat up and prayed, "God, show me what to do." And the answer came. The next morning, she gathered her small team, Amaka, 2 young men who stocked shelves, and a cashier. "We are lowering the prices," she announced. Amaka blinked. "But we will still make a profit, just not a big one. This store isn't just about me, it's for the people." Word spread fast. Soon, families who couldn't afford expensive markets lined up outside NECA's Fresh Market. Mothers bought baby food without fear. Fathers carried home bags of rice. And for the first time, NECA saw what true success looked like. Not just money, but people leaving her store with full hands and hopeful hearts. It was a peaceful afternoon at NECA's Fresh Market. The sun hung lazily in the sky, and the usual sounds of Lagos life filled the air. Street vendors calling out, cars honking, and the distant laughter of children playing. Inside the store, business was steady. A few mothers shopped for baby formula. An elderly man counted out Naira notes for a bag of rice, and Amaka stood behind the counter, tallying sales. NECA, busy arranging a display of fresh vegetables, barely noticed when the door opened. But then, a hush fell over the store. The usual chatter stopped. Customers turned, their eyes widening. A deep voice broke the silence. "NECA," she froze. That voice, deep, warm, familiar. Slowly, she turned around. Shaquille O'Neal stood in the doorway. For a moment, NECA couldn't speak. Her eyes filled with tears as she took in the sight of the man who had changed her life. Shaq grinned, towering over everyone in the room. "You didn't think I'd forget about you, did you?" Obina, playing near the counter, looked up at the giant man. His little face lit up. "Big Uncle!" he squealed, running straight into Shaq's legs. The store erupted in cheers. Customers clapped, whispering excitedly. The Shaquille O'Neal was standing in their neighborhood store. NECA wiped her eyes and laughed. "You really came back," Shaq nodded. "I had to see for myself." He strolled through the aisles, scanning the shelves. He saw the fresh fruit, the neatly arranged rice bags, the baby products lined up carefully. Everything was in place just as he had hoped. "You did good, NECA," he said, nodding in approval. NECA beamed with pride. "It hasn't been easy, but we're making it work." Shaq picked up a mango, tossing it in his hand. "You kept your promise," she nodded. "You kept yours too." As Shaq walked back toward the counter, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He knelt to Obina's level and handed it to him. "What's this?" Nika asked, watching as her son eagerly opened it. Inside was a tiny basketball, signed with Shaq's autograph. Obina gasped, hugging it to his chest. "Thank you, big uncle," Shaq ruffled his hair. "You're welcome, little man. You gotta start practicing early." Word spread quickly, and soon, a small crowd gathered outside the store. People from the neighborhood, young and old, came to see Shaq. A group of boys ran up, holding a worn-out basketball. "Uncle Shaq, teach us a move," Shaq laughed. All right. And right there, in front of Neka's Fresh Market, the NBA legend taught a group of Lagos boys how to do a slam dunk. Without a hoop, just with pure imagination and excitement. Neka watched, her heart full. This was more than just a store. It was a place of hope, a symbol of second chances. And Shaq, he was more than just a millionaire. He was family. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comment section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification.